Famous people who passed away in 1733. This is the second part. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. Barton Booth. He was born in 1682 and he died in May 1733. His age was 51 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was mercury ingestion. Barton was an acclaimed English actor whose powerful performances in Shakespearean plays made him a leading figure in early 18th century theatre. After 2 sessions in Ireland, he returned to London, where Thomas Betterton, who had previously failed to help him, probably out of regard for Booth's family, now gave him all the assistance in his power. At the Lincoln's Inn Fields Theatre, he first appeared as Maximus in Valentinian, and his success was immediate. He was the Haymarket with Betterton from 1705 to 1708, and for the next 20 years at Drury Lane. In 1713, he managed the theatre with Thomas Doggett, Colley Cibber, and Robert Wilkes. His greatest parts, after the title part of Joseph Addison's Cato, which established his reputation as a tragedian, were probably Hotspur and Brutus. His King Lear was deemed worthy of comparison with David Garrick's. As the ghost in Hamlet, he is said never to have had a superior. Matthew Tindle. He was born in 1657 and he died in August 1733. His age was 76 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an eminent English deist author. His works, highly influential at the dawn of the Enlightenment, caused great controversy and challenged the Christian consensus of his time. Tindle studied arts and law at Lincoln College, Oxford, and then at Exeter College, Oxford in 1678. He was elected Fellow of All Souls College. In a timely profession of faith in 1685, he saw that upon his high church notions a separation from the Church of Rome could not be justified, and accordingly he joined the latter. But discerning the absurdities of popery, he returned to the Church of England at Easter 1688. Between the early 1690s and his death in 1733, he made major contributions in various areas. As Deputy Judge Advocate of the Fleet, he had a large influence on the case law on piracy, such as his contributions to the 1693 to 1694 trial of John Golden. His timely pamphlet on the freedom of the press was hugely influential in the ending of the legal requirement that all publications be licensed before being printed. Sir Thomas Molyneux, 1st Baronet. He was born in April 1661 and he died in October 1733. His age was 72 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Sir Thomas was an Irish physician and scientist who made significant advancements in the understanding of Irish natural history and medical practices. Educated at Trinity College, Dublin, he became a doctor with an MA and MB in 1683. Aged 22, he went to Europe and continued his medical studies, resulting in gaining the MD degree in 1687. He was admitted a Fellow of the Royal Society on 3rd November 1686. He practiced medicine in Chester. Sometimes before 1690, he returned to Ireland. After the Battle of Boyne, he was elected a Fellow of the Irish College of Physicians in 1692 and became the first state physician in Ireland and also Physician General of the Army in Ireland, with the rank of Lieutenant General. Between 1695 and 1699, he presented retort in the Ireland House of Commons. He was Regius Professor of Physics at Trinity College from 1717 to 1733 and became a baronet in 1730. Georg Bohm, he was born in September 1661 and he died in May 1733. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Georg was a German Baroque composer whose innovative organ works significantly influenced later composers, including Johann Sebastian Bach. He received his first music lessons from his father, a schoolmaster and organist who died in 1675. He may also have received lessons from Johann Heinrich Hildebrand, cantor at Ohrdruf, who was a pupil of Heinrich Bach and Johann Christian Bach. After his father's death, he studied at the Latin Schule at Goldbach and later at the Gymnasium of Gotha, graduating in 1684. Both cities had cantors taught by the same members of Bach family who may have influenced Bohm. On 28 August 1684, he entered the University of Jena. Little is known about his university years or his life after graduation. He resurfaces again only in 1693 in Hamburg. We know nothing of how Bohm lived there, but presumably he was influenced by the musical life of the city and the surrounding areas. Johann Jacob Schweitzer. He was born in August 1672 and he died in June 1733. His age was 60 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Swiss scientist whose work in paleontology and geology advanced the understanding of Earth's history and its ancient life forms. His famous work was Physica Sacra in 4 volumes, which was a commentary on the Bible and included his view of the world, demonstrating a convergence of science and religion. It was richly illustrated with copper plate etchings and came to be called the Kupfer Bible or Copper Bible. He supported biblical creation, but his support for Copernican heliocentrism forced him to print his works outside Switzerland. He also supported antecedent concepts of Neptunism and considered fossils as evidence of the biblical deluge. A fossil from Oningen that he identified as human drowned by the flood was later identified as a Miocene salamander, which was named after him as Andreas Schweitzer. And Thérèse de Mardona de Corcella. She was born in January 1647 and she died in August 1733. Her age was 86 at the time of her death and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a prominent French writer and intellectual who used her salons and writings to explore issues of gender and society in the 18th century. She lost her father, an officer of the Fiscal Code of Paris in 1650, when she was just 3 years old. She was raised by her mother, who was distinguished by lightness of her habits, and by her mother's second husband, who instilled in her a love of literature. At a young age, writes her friend Bernard de Bouillet de Fontenelle, she often stole away from the pleasures of youth to read alone, and she began of her own accord to write extracts of what struck her the most. It was either stubble reflections on the human heart or ingenious turns of phrase, but most often reflections. Her reflections on women were not intended to be printed, and when they were published from the copies intended for friends of the author, she was greatly upset and believed herself dishonored. She bought up a large part of the edition to destroy it, which did not prevent several clandestine reprintings, and even a translation into English. Pierre-Étienne Monod. He was born in August 1657 and he died in August 1733. His age was 76 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a French Baroque sculptor, renowned for his intricate and grand works, particularly those commissioned for churches and palaces in Italy. Leaving Besançon in December 1686, he arrived in Rome 1687, where he was introduced to an established, tightly knit community of Burgundian artists. He quickly integrated into Rome's artistic circles and gained many commissions, with the main sculptures of the Saint Ignatius altar in the Church of the Gesù assigned to Pierre le Gros the Younger and Jean-Baptiste Théodon in 1695. French sculptures in Rome became highly prized for decades to come. On his last of three grand tours in 1699 to 1700, the English aristocrat John Cecil entrusted him with some major commissions. Like all sculptors working in Rome, he was called upon to restore fragmentary antiquities. Baroque restorations often took broader liberties of interpretations than 18th century and later tastes permitted. Franois Kubara. He was born in November 1668 and he died in September 1733. His age was 64 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a celebrated French composer whose elegant and expressive harpsichord music greatly influenced Baroque and early classical music. As a boy, he must have received his first music lessons from his father, but he died in 1679, leaving the position of Saint Gervais to his son, a common practice known as survivance that few churches ignored. At 21, he also lost his mother, Marie, but otherwise his life and career were accompanied by good fortune. In 1689, he married Marie-Anne Anceau, daughter of a prosperous family. The next year, he saw the publication of his Pièces d'Orgue, a collection of organ masses praised by Delalande, who may have assisted with the project. In 3 more years, he succeeded Tomlin at Louis XIV's court. The appointment brought him in touch with some of the finest composers of the day, as well as the aristocracy. His earliest chamber music dates from this time. He met his court duties in tandem with those he now had as organist at Saint Gervais, while also composing. Giovanni Geralo Museri. He was born in September 1667 and he died in October 1733. His age was 66 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Italian mathematician who laid the groundwork of non-Euclidean geometry, influencing later mathematical developments. He was ordained as a priest in March 1694. He taught philosophy at the University of Turin from 1694 to 1697 and philosophy, theology, and mathematics at the University of Pavia from 1697 until his death. He is primarily known today for his last publication in 1733, shortly before his death, now considered an early exploration of non-Euclidean geometry. Euclid, freed of every flaw, languished in obscurity until it was rediscovered by Eugenio Beltrami in the mid-19th century. The intent of his work was ostensibly to establish the validity of Euclid by means of a reductio ad absurdum, proof of any alternative of Euclid's parallel postulate. To do so, he assumed that the parallel postulate was false and attempted to derive a contradiction. Eberhard Louie, Duke of Württemberg. He was born in September 1676 and he died in October 1733. His age was 57 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was stroke. He was a German duke, known for his patronage of the arts, for transforming Ludwigsburg into a cultural and architectural landmark. In 1693, Magdalena Sibylla had the 16-year-old Eberhard prematurely proclaimed Duke of Württemberg by Emperor Leopold I. The young Duke showed no excessive interest in government affairs. He was described by his contemporaries as superficial and easily influenced. Most importantly, his behavior led to the political fate of the land being largely decided by his council. The Duke preferred hunting and left the administration of his county in the hands of his advisors. In 1707, he became the field marshal of the Swabian troops in the War of Spanish Succession. Shortly before 1700, he visited Louis XIV of France and planned to make Württemberg an absolutist state. He raised taxes, but financing still remained an obstacle. In 1704, he laid the foundation of his Ludwigsburg palace. Willem Adrian van der Stel. He was born in August 1664 and he died in November 1733. His age was 69 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an extraordinary counselor of the Dutch East Indies and governor of Cape Colony, a way station for the Dutch East India Company from 23 January 1699 to 1707. He was dismissed after a revolt and was exiled to Netherlands. He held the lordship of Nieuw en Oud-Wassemeer on the island of Tholen, probably through his wife. In 1691, he became an Shapen of Amsterdam. He did not return to the Cape until January 1699, when he was appointed to succeed his father as governor of the colony. He displayed an interest in horticulture and agriculture and conducted extensive farming experiments. He sent quite a few aloes to the Hertus Botanicus Amsterdam. He was the author of one of the South Africa's earliest gardening almanacas. He expanded the VOC's gardens and sent expeditions into the interior to the north to explore the rest of the country. His legacy is, however, stained by his apparent greed and extravagance. In 1705, during his rule, he was viewed as corrupt and dictatorial. Gerard Hood. He was born in August 1648 and he died in December 1733. His age was 85 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Dutch painter and engraver, celebrated for his meticulous and classical depictions of biblical and mythological scenes. He accompanied the Count of Sales-Therese, Germany, where he met the Utrecht painters Jan van Bunnik, Justus Newport, and Andreas de Witt. He returned to Utrecht with de Witt, where he worked for Frederick Nassau de Zerlestein briefly before visiting The Hague and Amsterdam. He then traveled to France on the promise from a marquis who wanted to give him a commission, but this promise falling through, he made some engravings of paintings by Francisque Millet. He then wanted to travel to England, but having written to his compatriot Lucas Wosterman, who was a he received word that there was more work to be had in Paris. He traveled to Paris, where he spent more than a year before returning to the Netherlands via Brussels. Together with the painter Hendrik Koek, in 1697 he asked Utrecht City Council for permission to found a drawing academy, which was granted. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.